Good morning. Welcome to the 2020 Vantage Mentor Kickoff. Welcome to students. We have 45 students in the room who are from the digital journalism and user experience design strands. We have many mentors watching on live stream, so welcome to you mentors out there. I also want to welcome the other 280 or so Vantage students, because in a normal year we hold this event in the Arts Center and we do it all at once, but this year we're having 7 small mentor kickoff events because that's the way we can run this safely according to the Minnesota Department of Health guidelines. So welcome to all the students who are going to watch a taped version of this, a video version of this later, and to all the mentors doing the same. So I am going to go into a video now, and then we're going to have our student introduce our keynote speaker. And I'm not going to reveal the name because our student will do that. But I want to introduce that student. His name is Drew Siegel. Drew was in digital journalism last year, and you're going to see a little bit of his work here in a second. He and a bunch of other students put together a lead-in video for the Mentor Kickoff program. And now Drew has come back as a senior, and he's in the design and marketing strand. So let's go ahead and roll the video.
So, Jackson, do you sports? Do you do sports? Do you play sports? What's the best way to ask this? Do you like to play sports? Oh my gosh, Dave, this is not that hard. Just ask the question. He's a high school kid. He probably already has a million questions for you.
Oh, it's late. I gotta get going.
Dave, relax. You're gonna do great. Just ask him a lot of questions, get to know him, make sure the relationship is comfortable so that he knows he can come to you at any time for advice. I mean, think about it this way. He's a 17-year-old kid. He's probably way more scared of you than you're of him.
Yeah, I don't believe that. Teenagers are pretty scary sometimes.
Okay, I need to establish a connection. Dave Schwartz, 13 years uncared, wife, 2 kids, hockey coach. No, Jackson, that's too much. That's creepy.
Dave, everything is going to be okay. Showing him the station would be a great idea. Offer a virtual tour and show him what happens behind the scenes. Make sure you ask about what he wants out of this mentorship, what he wants to get out of this year. I'm sure he's just as excited and eager as you are to get started. But one friendly tip, don't scare him off with the suits just yet.
Wait. What do you mean no suit? Our suit's not cool anymore? I thought I was supposed to be dapper. Should I be wearing a jersey instead?
Yeah, I know, but it's Dave Schwartz. I mean, I see him on TV every night. Wouldn't it be cool if I got to go to the Care 11 station, though?
Okay, so here's the deal. Just make sure you talk to your student as often and as efficiently as you can. And Dave, remember this. These are Gen Z kids. They're constantly talking to their friends. They're always on their phones 24/7. They're into technology. I mean, Snapchat, stuff like that.
Right. So technology is key, right? Technology. Video games. I love video games. Does anyone play Super Mario Brothers anymore? No? Fortnite. Fortnite's the big one. What about the Orange Julius dance? I can't play that game. I walked off a cliff. That's about the only way I can kill anybody. But I know Fortnite.
No, Dave, I don't think that would be a good idea.
You're building a long-term connection with him, so let him know that you're going to be here with advice and opportunity now and even after the year ends. You've got a perfect opportunity to influence a young journalist.
I really, really appreciate it. That is a lot to keep track of, but I can do it. I sure hope he's as excited as I am.
I'm Jackson Syndicate. Nice to meet you. All right, I think I'm ready.
So like Mr. Andre said, my name's Drew Siegel. This is my second year in the VANTAGE program, and I'm thrilled to introduce our keynote speaker today. You may recognize him. He's been on KARE 11 as a sports anchor for the past 13 years. He's also been very involved in the VANTAGE program as a guest speaker and a mentor. I remember last year when he was a guest speaker for our digital journalism class, he wrote on our whiteboard here with Sharpie, but don't worry, Ms. Hedstrom stayed after and took care of it. Here today with all of his experience in the field of broadcast journalism, let's give a warm VANTAGE welcome to our keynote speaker, Dave Schwartz.
I had no idea that I wrote on the board in Sharpie until this moment.
Embarrass you.
That's all right. You know what? That's it. That's a great setup for what we're going to talk about today. And first of all, I want to say good morning to all of you. And I want to tell you that I really wish I could be there in person. But unfortunately, I came down with a cold the other day and have been coughing pretty badly. So I will probably stop and cough. And you're great professors and teachers who care very much about you and your safety. Knew that it's not safe for me to be in there today, even though I'm feeling fine. But just to make sure that everything's okay. So I want to start by saying I'm really sad that I'm not there with you today. But I am really, really excited to be talking to you today about something that's very near and dear to me, and that is succeeding through failure. And that's going to be kind of the theme of what we'll chat about today. My life has been an extreme failure. You're asking yourself, why are you here to tell us about why you're failing? That doesn't really do anything for me. But what I want to tell you is that I want to change your thinking of how you view failure. And instead of failure being a bad thing, failure can be a really good thing. In fact, you can't really get to be the best at something until you are the worst at something. That's kind of crazy concept to think about. But if you do think about it, you can't be good until you're bad. And speaking of bad, I want to show you this really quick. And be kind now. This is me circa 2003, which was my first job at Lakeland News in Bemidji. Please keep in mind, I have a lot more hair, and monochromatic ties and shirts were a thing back then. I'm not sure how many of you were even alive, but so here it is. I'll give you a couple minutes of this.
And now your local sports with Dave Schwartz.
Good evening, everyone. Well, after a little melee at the end of Game 2 with the Wild and the Canucks, the NHL announced today that they'll fine Minnesota $25,000, which of course changed the battle cry for tonight's Game 3 from win one for the Gipper to let's get our money's worth. Down in Minneapolis, Matt Johnson says, you know what, if I'm going to pay, I'm going to get my punches in. He and Brad May going at it 7 seconds into the game. They waste no time. First period, no score. Vancouver on the power play. Marcus Naslund with the wrister. The rebound comes to Brendan Morrison. He slips that one by 1-0 Canucks. Later on, Wild on the power play now. Andrew Brunette gets it in the slot. Nice backhand pass to Philip Kuba. He puts that away. We're tied at 1. Second period, Wild on the power play. Down by 1. Watch closely. You want to see a good wrister? He's putting on a clinic. Marian Gaborik just kills Dan Cloutier. We're tied at 2. Later on in the second, Henrik Sedin puts in the slot to his twin brother, Daniel Sedin. That's not fair. No one said you could bring twins. That's a final. Vancouver wins this game by a final of 3-2, and luckily they play the next one down in St. Paul.
So that was 2003, not the least of which some of the issues there were the graphics were wrong. A lot of things with my delivery that I look back on and I go, oh my gosh, how could I do that? So how did I get from there to where I am now? And we'll watch a little something a little later. I got comfortable with being uncomfortable. And what I mean by that is I was okay with not being okay. There are going to be a lot of people in your life that are going to tell you yes. There's going to be even more people that tell you no. And what I want you to do is I want you to listen to that. And I want you to learn from them. You can learn from the people that tell you yes, but sometimes you learn even more from the people that'll tell you no. And there will always be more no's than yeses. They'll tell you you're not good enough. They'll tell you you're not tall enough. They'll tell you you're not strong enough, whatever business you're in, whether it's in sports or whether it's business world, people will tell you no. When I was in college, I had a professor. I don't want to name her name, but I can picture exactly what she looks like. That's my best recollection of her, I believe. But when I was in college, she told me I wasn't going to be a journalist. She said, Dave, you'll never be a journalist. You can't write, you can't make your deadlines, and you're not good with AP style, you're not good with grammar. And so I had to decide if I could go two directions on that. I could either decide that I didn't want to do that and listen to her and quit, or I could go, you know what, I'm going to use this as motivation and I'm going to be the greatest dang journalist I can ever think of. I chose the latter. I did graduate her class and I did graduate college, and I ended up going to graduate school. Through my journey here, through school and through my career, I have learned a lot of things about learning through failure. And I want to share some of those with you today. We talked about this already, listening to those who tell you yes, listen closer to those who tell you no. She was not the first person to tell me no, I wasn't going to be good enough or aren't good enough. She probably won't be the last that tells me that. I have applied for jobs all throughout before I got to Care 11 and didn't get those jobs, or applied for awards and didn't win those awards. So always asking myself, why was it no? What did I do? What can I do better to get me to yes? Eventually, you will find someone that you respect. And hopefully, that's a mentor from your program this year that you meet, and they can help guide you. For me, that was my professor in graduate school, Bob Lissett. Bob Lissett was known as one of the toughest professors to have at Syracuse, where I went to graduate school. He was known for weeding out those who were not strong enough to do this and really fostering those who can. Weeding out is a term in journalism and business. You hear it a ton. It's getting rid of those people who can't hack it and keeping those people who can. Bob Lissett was known for getting the best out of you if you could hack it in his course. So I was really excited to have him. What I didn't realize is that he was going to bring out things in me that I had never even realized I had. He did this thing called a live lab. And basically what it was is where we stood against a green screen, like a weather screen, and they would do a press conference. You'd get your information, and then what you would have to do is disseminate that information to your audience. A lot of things like we do today. We go to a press conference, we get a couple things, and we have to go live within a couple of minutes, get those things in order, and deliver the information. And what Bob loved to do is to put little kinks in everything that you were doing, just to see if he could throw you off and see if he could keep you poised. Because as an anchor, you have to be poised, right? If anyone watched the coverage of the riots a couple months ago, Julie Nelson, Randy Shaver from Care 11 did a phenomenal job. They were calm, they were cool, because nobody wants to turn on the TV in a time of unrest and see their anchors going, oh my gosh, this is awful. You don't want that. You want to be calm. You want to be able to, I was told once, you want to be able to put out a fire with your left hand while you deliver the news to the right and not have anyone know the difference. So Bob would always throw these little tweaks in there. And during this specific live lab, Bob was our live guest. So what we would do is the producer in our ear, we always wear an earpiece. The producer would tell us, okay, you're on, go ahead. And you had about 1 minute and 30 seconds, which really goes by fast. So I start going through my live shots. I have my information memorized. I have everything written down perfectly, bullet point by bullet point. And it's time for me to interview Mr. Bob Lissett. So he comes in, he's the fire chief, I think, in this scenario. And I grab the microphone and I start talking, and I deliver my line. I wish I still had this on tape to show you, but I don't even think there's tapes to play these kind of tapes anymore. That's how long ago it was. But I'm delivering the information, and I go to ask Bob my first question, and I say, sir, could you tell me about what happened here today? And I turn to him, and he very slowly, as he starts to answer, he takes the microphone from me. And I don't really think much about it, put my hand down, and he starts talking. But he doesn't stop talking, and he just keeps talking, and he just keeps talking. And I'm thinking in my head, I'm running out of time. I've only gotten through a couple of my bullet points. I have to get through some more. And so I'm going to have to take control of this here. Well, I go to grab the microphone back because I need to finish. And then I'm getting in your ear, a lot of times producers will say to you, they'll say the dreaded word wrap. What wrap means is it's time to stop talking because we have to move on to the next story or commercial break, and you've gone past your allotted time limit. And I'm hearing in my ear, wrap. I'm thinking, I got to stop. I got to get him off doing this. And I try to grab the mic from Bob, and he doesn't give it to me. He hangs on to it. And I hear my producer again, wrap, you got to wrap. And I'm trying to get the mic back from him. I'm saying, thanks very much. And I can't get it back from him. And finally, she says, you got to get out of this right now. So I grab the microphone with all my might and I rip it from him. And I look at the camera and I don't even look at my notebook, and I deliver my next 3 bullet points as fast and as clearly and as concisely as I can. And I just get out of it. I'm dripping with sweat. I leave that day completely dismayed. And I'm thinking, oh man, that was a really tough one. So the next day we have to watch them. This is always the greatest thing. You have to watch your work in front of your classmates. And excuse me, you have to watch these in front of your classmates. And so it comes time for me for him to watch mine. He puts my tape in and we start to press play. And he gets to the point where he takes the microphone from me and he hits pause. And he said, you never give anybody the microphone. You never give anybody the microphone. You have no idea what I might say. You can't control me at that point. I could say such terrible things that would get you fined by the FCC and all sorts of things. Never give away the microphone. Okay, lesson learned. He hits play. We watch a little more. He pauses just at the moment I'm about to take the microphone back. And he looks at the screen and he looks at me and he says, you were really mad. And I said, yeah, I was. I wanted that microphone back. So he pushes play and we watch the last 30 seconds of it. And he stops at the end and he says, you're really good when you're ticked. I said, I guess that's true. And I held on to that. And it's come into play a lot for me in my career. The latest last year, and you remember the Minnesota-Wisconsin game? I was outside live at the end and Wisconsin had won, Minnesota lost. So the Gopher fans were really upset. They're screaming at me, they're heckling me. I don't know why, it wasn't my fault, but that often happens to me. And I just focused in and got through. And it worked. And I remember that as I kept going throughout my career, that when I get mad or I get close to deadline, which happens a lot, I tend to focus in more. So I took that with me. In my first job, I had the opportunity to learn from a really great news director, another mentor of mine. His name is Dennis Wyman, and he's still at Lakeland News in Bemidji. And he was someone that I really respected and that I trusted. And I had a really bad sportscast one night. And let me tell you, your first job, you have a lot of bad things happen, whether you're not on television or you are. The only difference is when I make a mistake, hundreds of thousands at that point, maybe only a couple thousand people saw it, but it really hit me. You know, this is my first job. I'm excited. I no longer have to take classes I don't want to take. I'm just talking about sports for a living. And it was the greatest thing in the world. I was so excited about it. Well, I had this sportscast one night that was just, woof. I'm telling you, it was bad. And I came off the set and Dennis and I were the only ones left in the newsroom. Of course, it was only a newsroom of 4 people. Excuse me. It was only a newsroom of a few people. So I had to, it was just us. And I'm kicking my chair, I'm throwing my jacket, I'm slamming, mad at the desk. I'm 23, 24 years old. And I'm so upset, I'm almost in tears. And Dennis walks over and he sits down and he says, Dave, you gotta let this go. Because it's really important that in this business that you understand that there's gonna be highs and there's gonna be lows. But you can't get too high on the highs and you can't get too low on the lows. Because if you do, you'll never make it for very long in this business. If you're beating yourself up after every show that's bad, you're gonna burn out. If you're getting so excited after every show that's so great, you're never gonna realize that there's things you gotta change to get better. And that was a really important lesson for me too, about kind of riding the wave a little bit, learning to make sure that I'm kind of staying as even keel as possible, despite whether a show's good or bad. Don't get discouraged when you fail. Use that as a way of getting better. If there's something that you take from this today, I want it to be this. You will fail. I have failed. We have all failed. But you got to use it as a way of getting better. That first job in Bemidji, I was able to cover Vikings camp down here. And this was 2003 or 4, I believe. So I don't know how many of you were Vikings fans or even remember this. Mike Tice was the head coach. Mike Tice was a very intimidating guy. He was about 6'7", 200 some odd pounds, very intimidating, and he used that against you. And we were getting ready to talk to Mike that day, and he would do his media availabilities in front of a screen fence. That's it. So all of a sudden it's there's national media. Basically he would stand there and there's about 75 to 100 people, it seems like, standing around him. So I'm deciding I'm going to get in there and I'm going to ask my question. We go down to Vikings camp for maybe a day or two, and we have to get all these story ideas, try to get them all done. So I'm ready to talk to Mike, and I run up as soon as they say, okay, Mike's ready now. So I run in there. Here's little Dave from Lakeland News, and I'm there with Randy Shaver from Care 11. I'm there with Mike, Mark Rosen from WCCO, with national people, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to ask my question. I'm ready. And I'm going to do a story on one of these guys. His name was Willie Offord. I still remember to this day. He had a really good camp, and it really it was really looked at as starting to be a starter. I think they were getting pretty close. So I ran up to Mike, and I got my microphone in there. It's a little Lakeland News in Bemidji. You could see it. If I had the clip, it's still in there. There's a million mics around. There's mine. And I'm getting ready, and I'm going to ask him a question. And finally, he says, all right, any questions? I said, Mike, can you tell me how good Willie Offord has been this camp and how he's impressed you? And I rehearsed the question over a million times in my head because I wanted to make sure it was a really good question and that it was a really pointed question, so he had to answer. And he looked at my mic flag. He realized where I was from, that I was just some punk kid from a small market, so he didn't have to worry about me again. And he looks at me and he goes, he made the starting lineup. He went from third on the depth chart to first. What else do you want to know? And I said, no, nothing. And I put my head down and that was it. So I didn't get the story. I didn't have enough to make a story. I didn't follow up. I wasn't adamant about what I wanted to accomplish. I got scared. I failed, and I thought, well, that's it. But I used that as a way of getting better. And I learned that if you want to get your story, you got to be strong. You have to really take charge of the interview, take charge in whatever you're doing. All of you students that want to be reporters or producers or anchors or whatever it is, learning to command an interview is a really important thing to do. And coaches, athletes, government, Congress workers, politicians, they want to control the interview. It's your job to do it. And I figured that out then. I learned that that's the way I had to do things. Sometimes it is important to learn what you don't want to be like, or then what you don't want to do. It eventually makes you the better version of yourself. And that's what I learned from that experience. I learned that I wanted to be someone who was forceful. I wanted to be someone who got the stories. I didn't want to be someone who cowered when someone asked me a question and got scared. And I thought back to what Dennis had said to me about making sure that I learned from experiences instead of just getting so upset. I thought back to Bob Lissett, who told me when it's on the line and you're stressed, that you're better that way and you get the answers. And I kind of kept all that with me. And I hope that I learned a little bit from that. Beyond that time, I still have had many of successes and many failures, and frankly, too many to list at this point. And so what I want you to take with you today is where we got to at the end. So here I am now at 2020. I'm not going to play this whole thing because I'm going a little bit long, but I'll just give you a little snippet. This is my most recent stuff. Some of you may have seen it, some of you may not. So here you go. This is recent Dave.
Perfect night for baseball, if only we had a game to go to. Hello, darkness, my old friend. We've come to talk with you again because for a 16th time we're weeping as our postseason ends with a sweeping. And it's again to the Yankees, and I've got nothing that rhymes with Yankees. The Twins were swept last night 5-1 at Target Field. Yankees have ousted them from the postseason in 6 of their last 7 trips. Minnesota looked very little like the team that won 101 games this year and hit 307 home runs. They won none in this series and just hit 4 home runs, all solo shots. But they certainly have accomplished a lot this season, and they have a lot of the same pieces coming back next year. And they believe that this trip was the first of many and not the last.
Going forward, this is something that
a lot of new faces on the Timberwolves roster who now only know winning Timberwolves. Shh, don't tell them, especially not about the previous 13-game losing skid, which was snapped tonight. D'Angelo Russell not playing tonight.
All right, so a little different. I think I've made some progress. I can find still about 20 things I wanted to change, but I hope that you see a difference there in how I commanded myself. I was a little less scared, a little less timid. That's what 17 years of successes and failures will do to you. And that's where this little chart comes in. It's not exact. It starts with my first job in 2003 and comes back to 2020. The straight line there is not true. Okay, success is not a straight line. If anyone tells you that they started at the bottom, went straight to the top, and nothing ever happened to them to make them better, that it just was an absolute smooth ride to the top of the hill, I think they're probably lying. I don't want to guarantee it, but I think they're probably lying. Success is actually a series of peaks and valleys, highs and lows, highs and lows. You make a mistake, you go down. You do better, you go up. But with each one of those, you continue to rise. You continue to get better. And in the end, you're at the same place. You're at the top. You're at where you want to be at 2020. But you have to be resilient, and you have to be willing to learn every time you make that failure. So what I want to encourage you all to today is to fail this year. Take some risks. Don't worry about it not working out. That's what your mentor is here for. They're there to help you get back on the path. They may tell you something and you say, you know what, I really like that idea. They may tell you something and you go, you know what, I don't think I like that idea, but it's going to get me to where I want to be. So take that information, take risks. Don't be afraid to fail. It makes you better. And for the mentors that are watching, please make sure that you push and challenge the kids, because they are capable of so much more than we know. In my 4 years of mentoring, this is now my 5th, every year I am amazed at how much you kids know and know how to do and are willing to do, because you're resilient, because you're smart, and because you're brave, and you really want to be the best at what you're doing. So challenge these kids, make sure they learn, and make sure this is all a great process. And I'm thrilled to be back with you again this year. Thank you so much for having me, and enjoy this great year through Vantage.
Thanks, Dave, so much for being with us this morning. We have time for probably just 2 questions. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Schwartz? About that content, any surprises? Yeah, hold on. Just a second, I'm going to come back and give you the mic.
Okay, I was wondering, like, at what point in your life did you know that you wanted to be like a sports anchor versus just like a regular anchor?
Well, I knew that I always loved sports. I was a hockey player in college for a short period of time. And when I got cut from the team, I realized I probably had to figure out something else to do. I actually, in a very kind of happenstance way, I had gone to the student radio station at orientation. And one of the guys there, who was the general manager of the radio station, who I didn't talk about, but was also a great mentor for me throughout college, said, have you ever thought about doing sportscasting? And I said, no, I'm going to play hockey. Well, I didn't play hockey. And so he said, what do you know about football? And I said, well, I was on the football team in 4 years of high school, but I did a lot of watching and not as much playing. And he said, well, that's great. You can be our color commentator. So I started doing that, and I found an absolute love and passion for the action and being involved in it and being able to tell people what was happening. And that eventually turned into a love for telling stories and getting information. I am really nosy. My father would always tell me, my parents tell me it's Yiddish. I'm Jewish, and my parents would say, oh, you're a yenta. And a yenta means you're nosy. You always got to know people's information. And I am. I love getting information and knowing information and giving that information out. So once I started doing the games, and I did a radio show, and I broadcast every single sport we had at Hobart and William Smith College. And I was actually an economics major from there, because they didn't have a journalism major, which is why I had to go to graduate school. They had a media major. That's where that professor that I learned, and we won't go back to her again. But yeah, I kind of figured out in college that this is what I wanted to do. And my general manager, his name was Mike Black, said, you should do television because there's more money in TV than there is in radio. And I said, okay, I'll do TV. And that was really it. I took what I loved, talking about sports, and my abilities, which is talking and blabbing and being nosy, and I put them together, and I happened to find this job. And I've been incredibly lucky and blessed to be able to do this for 17, almost 18 years. Good question.
Great. We have time for one more question. Anybody else have a question? Here we go.
Hi, I'm Henry. My question is, well, you were talking about success being a series of ups and downs. What's a good way to kind of keep yourself motivated and keep pushing yourself forward even when things aren't going as you'd like?
That is a great question. Henry, is it Henry? Henry? You know, I guess I've always had kind of a goal at the end, and I would tell you to set goals for yourself. But set small goals and big goals. And I remember when I left graduate school, I had a little piece of paper and I wrote my goals down on it. And I think a couple of them were, get a job in a top 15 market, win a regional Emmy, and win a national Emmy and be a national. At the time I wanted to be a national sports anchor. That my career path changed a bit because I wanted it to, but I looked at those goals a lot, and it's important to have a goal for something to reach for. It's also important to understand that it takes time, and that if you don't reach that goal, it's okay. But setting those goals for yourself and make them big. Make them as big as you want to make them, because you never really know what's going to happen. When I applied for the job at Care 11 in 2007, I didn't think I had any. I was like, there's no way I'm going to get this job. I don't have enough experience. There's no way. So I sent my tape, and I'm like, whatever, I'm not going to get the job. When I got the first call back, I was stunned. I was absolutely in shock. I couldn't even get the words out of my mouth. When I got the job, I was amazed. And so I tell a lot of our interns that we work with, apply for every job you want. Let them decide that they don't want you before you decide whether you want them. Let them decide, and then you can kind of go for it. But set big goals, set big dreams, and don't be afraid. As crazy as they are, they're yours. They're only yours. You can share them with people. You don't have to share them with people. And they'll change. They'll change throughout your life. My goal used to be to win a Stanley Cup. That's what I have in my yearbook, to win a Stanley Cup and to laugh at all those who didn't think I could do it along the way. But I didn't win a Stanley Cup. But I'm very happy with the way my life turned out. My goals changed. So those goals that I wrote down, I've done some of them. I've made it to a top 15 market. I have won a couple of Emmys, but I never made it to a national network. And that was okay with me because my goals changed. I didn't want to get there. But your goals are for you only, and you should dream as big as you can. And don't be afraid to set the loftiest, biggest goals. Even if people tell you you're crazy, you're never going to do that. Because they'll tell you. But set them for you, and then always revisit them every now and then. Take a look. Okay, have I, check yourself. Have I done this yet? Have my goals changed? Do I want to add something else? Do I want to take something off the list? But I think most importantly to get you through the successes and the failures is to see the finish line and to go for that goal and know that it's always there. And I think, at least for me, that helped me get through all those tough times.
All right, let's have one more round of applause for our keynote speaker, Dave Schwartz.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Dave, can't thank you enough. Dave called us yesterday morning. He was going to be standing where I am this morning, and he called us. I've got minor cold symptoms, and he did the right thing, which is to say I can't come in person. And you guys all have been tasked with that same challenge when you get your sniffles, because you're going to. When you have symptoms, you got to stay home. So thanks for demonstrating what we're hoping for from our students, Dave. We're going to now transition to the mentor meetings, and Dave mentioned at the beginning of his talk that this is his 5th year mentoring. And we have a lot of mentors joining us by live stream. And so before we transition, I'm just going to thank everybody who does this, including Dave and all of our other mentors. It's a pivotal part of this program. It's why our students are successful. We wouldn't have nearly as much success in this program if the mentors weren't there to coach. And we thank you so much for contributing all that time that you do to our students and to our program. So with that, we're going to end the live stream, and students, you have your mentors' phone numbers. It's time to make that phone call. Have a great conversation.